Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of our CommuniD Live. I'm Elvio Gramignano, the founder and managing director of CommuniD, and today I am joined by a great speaker, Tom Salemi, a leading voice in the MedTech and the host of the Device Talk podcast. Tom, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. No, very happy to be here. It's unusual for me to be a guest, so I always appreciate the flipping of the relationship, so I can do my job better once I go back to talking to people and learn from others. I'm Tom Salemi. I host our Device Talks weekly podcast, but we also put together our Device Talks meetings, our in-person meetings, and our virtual meetings. You can find them all at devicetalks.com. That's all the pitching I'll do.
Great. Tom, what we want to discuss today is the concept of personal branding.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that is reshaping a little bit our industry. Let's say since the social media started, we have seen a change in the overall industry, and
Yep.
the person has come a little bit more forward. And so we have personalities like Elon Musk or Richard Branson that are clearly bigger than their own brands.
Mm-hmm.
And we have started to consider the fact that there is a product brand, a corporate brand, and then a personal brand that is adding to this. I think in the last couple of years, we have seen the same situation happening in the MedTech. And I would like to, since you're an expert in this field, you've been speaking with many of these leaders. I would like to understand what is your take? What do you think about this trend that is happening right now?
Sure. No, there's a lot to be said about it. I mean, we'll put MedTech aside for a moment, just the personal branding element. I think when we pull out the Elon Musks and all the big folks, it can be a bit, I think, both intimidating and I think discouraging to I don't know if those are certainly influencing their influencers and they're folks who say a lot, but I don't think they're necessarily representative of what folks like you and I and the people listening can do and can be. We don't need to take stances on everything. We don't need to tweet about or X about or whatever you want to say about this or that. But what we can do, and what I think we have to do personally, and I'll putting the the benefit of the medtech industry aside for a moment. Personally, I think platforms like LinkedIn really give you an opportunity to demonstrate your knowledge, to demonstrate your curiosity, to share a little bit of your personality, to show who you are as a person. And I think that's essential because anyone who's looking for work these days, and you know this as well. I mean, in many cases, it can be a very cold process, a very distant process. Like you can't just call someone up anymore, and everything is done through this submission or that. Obviously, there are great search firms out there that help with a lot of the more high profile situations. But for folks who are applying for jobs, I think it's easy to feel as if you're getting lost in the process, and you probably are. And I think one way to cut around that is to take the initiative and to really tell the world who you are and what you can do before you need them to know who you are and what you can do, because I think that'll make your process of advancing your career even easier.
So basically, okay, because there is this element of the influencer. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in most of the cases, when I talk to CEOs, they tell me, but I don't want to be an influencer.
Oh,
And
I know.
I try to shift them into the concept of the key person of influence, somebody that is not an influencer, but you are influencing the market. There is it's kind of weird because it's the same thing. From a semantic standpoint, it's probably the same thing, but can be completely different. An influencer is something that is showing where it's going or what he's doing. Instead, the key person of influence is sharing competencies and knowledge.
Right. Yeah, I would swap out influencers, and I agree with you 100%. I would swap out the word influencers for the word leaders. And I think folks like Yvonne Tornos at Zimmer Biomet, he's on LinkedIn all the time. He writes all of his own comments. He shares his personal story. He interacts with folks. If you message him, he'll, maybe not everybody, but I know folks who have messaged him and gotten responses. We had him at Device Talks Boston last month, and I asked him about that. Who are you writing for when you write your posts? And he's writing for himself, and he's writing for his employees, and he's writing for the industry. He says his comms team would like him to slow down and not post as much. His executive team would like him to slow down and not post, but he feels an obligation to be out in front. And I challenge other CEOs of large MedTech companies to do the same. I mean, you are the stewards of the MedTech industry. You're leading the companies that are driving our whole industry forward. I don't think you should stand back and let other people tell your company's story. I think you need to stand out and lead. Influencers, people start to think, oh, well, you're going to talk about, whatever product you're using, or it takes on a different meaning. But leading is leading. It's leading whether it's in person, it's leading whether it's in an in-person company meeting, and it's leading on LinkedIn, where you can address all of your employees at once and the community more broadly. So I think it's a response. I agree with you. I think it's a responsibility for MedTech CEOs to move forward and to lead on LinkedIn.
And you're opening another very important element, because yes, this is clearly a responsibility. I feel that is a responsibility of a CEO, but I think it's also a responsibility of many other pivotal people within the industry. I don't know if there is in our industry the R&D leader. I think it's somebody that should put his face in front of a camera and try to explain what they're looking for. And so, I think these people, the R&D, maybe the clinical person, probably these people more than a marketing person that is expected to do that.
Oh, I agree with you there as well. I just posted on LinkedIn this morning. MedTech for the entire time I've covered the MedTech industry, I feel as if we've sort of operated in the shadows of the pharma industry and the shadows of the tech industry. We're kind of in that little valley in between, and nobody quite knows what we do, or what not me. I don't build anything, but what our smart people do, what our engineers do, what our R&D folks do. I mean, they really create miracles, and they're doing it in the dark, and they're doing it without fanfare. I mean, I hear more on podcasts and social media about the person who perfected the online advertising tool, like they cured cancer, when we actually have people curing cancer, and they don't talk about that. We don't hear those stories, and we don't hear those missions and those purposes. So I agree. We not to take away anything I said about the CEOs, but I think MedTech people, the everyday people, need to step forward and need to start sharing why. And we open up every podcast with why. Why are you in MedTech? What brought you here? And it's always a great story. Sometimes it's a relative who passed away. Sometimes the person wanted to be a doctor, but she decided to be an engineer instead because she could help more people that way. There's always an interesting story, and I think MedTech people have obligation is strong, but they would really help the industry a lot by letting folks know who they are and what drives them. And there's ways to do it. I think when you and I talk about this, there are people like, well, I'm not going to talk about myself. I don't like to talk about myself. And I get that. I don't mind talking about myself, obviously, but I get there's ways for these folks who actually know what this industry is about to share their knowledge and to really lift the profile of the whole industry.
And that said, I have another question, because I think as industry, we're not experiencing this type of putting ourselves forward,
Mm-hmm.
and that's clear. But which are the reasons you think are at the root cause of this behavior? I heard risk. Some of the CEOs were telling me, but yeah, but did you appreciate the risk for me of talking out and expressing exactly what I want to do? I will eliminate a portion of people. Risk is one thing. The other thing is, oh wow, but it's a burden. It's a lot of work. What do you think is the main reason why a lot of leaders are not doing this?
So if we're going to talk at the CEO level, yeah, I think you're right. I think risk is part of it. And I don't think, I'm not asking anyone to get up and speak for or against tariffs or anything else that's politically charged. But I do think that they can get up forward and say, hey, I visited the great folks in Warsaw, Indiana today. Here are some pictures of me with and here's what they're working on. Here's why I'm excited. I think the risk thing is overstated. I honestly think a lot of the comms teams at this companies create an atmosphere of fear that everything has to be managed so precisely. And I know they're publicly traded companies, and I know there are things that need to be adhered to. But I also know that there are CEOs who put themselves out there and generate enthusiasm and excitement for our industry, and they create a lot of goodwill for our industry. And I can't imagine that if we saw the other CEOs at other companies doing this, I just feel like it would really lift the whole industry, and it would eliminate risk, and it would make everyone's jobs easier, because I think MedTech would start to get the attention that it deserves, the good attention that it deserves, because these products that are being created are saving lives, and they're helping people manage their diabetes and reduce their pain, and they're performing miracles, and people need to know about it.
Oh wow, you're touching on a very interesting point. When you're saying the attention that we deserve, it's because you're thinking of going outside of the MedTech. Actually, because our communication, when we have a communication, and it doesn't happen very often, but when we have a communication, we tend to talk to our colleagues more than outside.
Right.
Instead, you're thinking more of trying to go outside, trying to go directly to the patients or to the investors or politicians. What is? I don't want to put words.
No, I think that's a fair question. I think if we have a strong intra-industry communication between other MedTech folks and MedTech, I think it would just raise the level of the volume of our conversation so that others will notice. I'm not saying that CEOs should speak directly to investors or to others. What I am saying is that I think that for my entire career, I think medical device folks have just sort of kept their head down and said, I'm gonna work in this product, and I'm gonna develop this device, and we're gonna get it to the doctors, and they're gonna help the patients with it. And that's it. And that's the end of the day, and that's the end of my job. And I think that is 80% of the job. But I do think in this world where attention is currency, where attention is power, that our industry could benefit from folks actually knowing, like regular folks actually knowing what the medical device industry is, what the MedTech industry is. I live in Boston. If I'm at a barbecue and people ask me what I do, if I said I create conferences for the MedTech industry, like they'd look at me sideways, like, well, what is that? Now, if I said I worked at Facebook or if I said I worked at Google, they'd be like, oh, well, there you go. I know exactly, what the kind of company you work for. But medical device doesn't have the same public notoriety, sounds negative, but the same broader reputation as some other industries do. And I think we would benefit from it. I think we would draw, if we were better known, I think more young people would direct their careers this way. My son, God bless him, he's studying to be a mechanical engineer, and he wants to go into the aerospace industry because he wants to build rockets. And I get that, and I totally get rockets are cool, but medical devices are very cool too. And I don't think we talk about the magic that goes on in the medical device industry. And I keep teasing him, like, all right, I'll let you do this aerospace stuff for a couple of years, but then you got to come to MedTech. But I want people, and there's more than there used to be, but I want young people to like dream someday of building a device that helps people breathe or that helps people in some form or fashion. I want us to create that broader energy for the community, for the world.
Yeah, and returning 1 second to this concept of the risk, you mentioned Ivan Tornos, and he clearly has been communicating in a bold way. That's what he keeps telling. But I've never seen negative comments or aggressive comments against him. And honestly, in my career, I've never seen any particular big fights on the social media. What I want to say is that our industry, I don't know, I don't know if I can say this, but it's a little bit more educated, maybe. LinkedIn is not Facebook.
Right.
There are multiple elements that
Right.
contribute to the fact that it's very unlikely that you will have to face extreme negative comments.
No, I agree. No, and there are going to be comments for a high profile person. I mean, I posted something on LinkedIn about Ivan at the end of the year. I was kind of doing my top 10 followers or top 12 followers. I think the top 12 people I follow on LinkedIn, and Ivan was one of them. And someone did come on and comment on it. It was a negative comment, and I found out later it was a former employee. I was surprised because the person's name is there and said they worked at the company. They don't anymore. But it was shocking, like, to see a negative comment like that, because you're right, it doesn't happen very often because there's accountability. So the risk, I mean, I think that maybe the risk they're talking about is more, we're a publicly traded company. We don't want to, say something that the SEC won't allow us to say. But I think there's a lot of comfortable running room for MedTech leaders to share who they are and what they do and what their companies are doing without putting anybody at risk. And if some knucklehead chimes on with a negative comment once in a while, I think it always reflects more poorly on that person than on the poster. So I don't think the risk is as grave as it's thought to be. I do think it's probably used as a way to make the lives of some folks easier. If my CEO is not posting all the time on LinkedIn, I don't need to read it and make sure there's anything there that needs to be unsaid. So I'll just tell him not to post, and then my job's easier, and that's it. And I think priorities are out of whack if we approach it that way.
Yeah. Okay, I would like to leverage a little bit on your experience of those leaders, because you have interviewed a lot of them. And I would like to understand, in your opinion, which are the main traits of what you described as a leader? And I would say a leader that can confidently communicate. Which are the common traits? And the other question, sorry, I'm making two questions.
No, that's fine.
And the other question is, should anyone do it, or there should be somebody that step out and say, no, I don't have I don't have the basis for being a communicator?
I think it should be, to your second question. I think if you're the CEO or an executive at a company, I think you should be able to handle a few questions from some guy with a journalism degree like me, who's not out to get. I mean, I'm not Mike Wallace. I'm not looking to embarrass anyone. I go into these conversations trying to shine what a positive light on things for the most part. I will ask some questions that aren't expected. So I think there are folks who are really excellent at supply chain management or terrific at engineering, and they're just not comfortable speaking. I don't want to begrudge those people. I certainly get it, but I think if you're going to be sort of if your picture is going to be in the website, I hope you can lead a conversation or be part of a conversation. To your point about the traits, my greatest conversations have been with CEOs who do, they do not only answer the questions that I ask them to, that I, when I interview someone on stage, I'll give them the questions. On the podcast, I won't. I'll just say, look, like, these are the things I want to talk about. But on stage, it's a different atmosphere. People are looking at you. It's a little more. So I want to be considerate. But there's times when someone says something and I want to follow up on it. And man, those, like, we had Mike Mahoney on a couple of years ago at the Boston Device Talks Boston, and I was talking about his move to Johnson and Johnson. I'm sorry, his move from Johnson and Johnson to Boston Scientific. And he talked about and I just asked him, like, what was going through your head? Like, you had a senior position at the largest MedTech company, or one of two larger MedTech companies in the world, and you were given the opportunity to take the helm at a smaller than struggling company, not struggling anymore, not by any means. And because I like to unpack those moments, because I think those are the moments that are most common to all of us. We all have moments in our lives where we're saying, should I go this way or that? And I love to explore those this ways or that. So he walked us through. I hired a consultant to review both options, and I talked to my mentors and my colleagues, and got a temperature of whether this was a good opportunity or not. And he ultimately concluded, like, no, this is not a good opportunity. I'm not going to take the job as CEO of Boston Scientific. And then he tells this story on stage. He was like, but then, I went to the final meeting. I was going to say thank you, but no. And then he said he went into the restroom and looked in the mirror and was like, all right, it's Monday morning. This was a Saturday. Monday morning, I turned this down. How do I feel? And he realized, like, I'm going to feel terrible. Like, I'm going to feel terrible if I turn this down. So he turned it around and just said, I'll take it. And look at him now. I love that. I love that he just let us all see, like, look, I don't have all the answers either, but I followed my gut, and I took this opportunity. And yeah, we're talking to him because it was a great opportunity, and he succeeded wonderfully at leading that company, and the company's doing fantastic now. But I always enjoy CEOs who give a little bit of themselves beyond what I can get from a website. Kevin Lobo does the same with Stryker. When I talked to him about the Mako acquisition, he kind of recounted in detail his going down to Florida to make the bid on Mako. He had just become CEO of Stryker. It was a big gamble, and he sort of talked through the risks of that, and how basically he was willing to risk his job but not the company on this deal. And I just love those granular sort of details. So for me, a great quality of a CEO for an interview perspective is someone who lets you see a little bit of themselves. If someone's just sticking to the script and isn't opening up a little bit, I can feel it. The audience, most important when you're talking in front of a bunch of people, you can tell when they're like, all right, I'm going to scroll my phone. Like, there's nothing new here. But when the CEO does let themselves in, you can, like, the whole place gets quiet, and you can just know people are listening. We had Ivan Tornos on it, and like I mentioned, in Boston, and it was the same thing. Like, everyone was quiet and paying attention to every word. And that's when you know that someone is a good communicator.
Okay, excellent. You mentioned multiple leaders, and like you mentioned, Ivan Tornos, that is very, very big on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Lobo, for instance, is less working on LinkedIn, and he's probably doing more interviews and shows.
Mike Mahoney too. Mike Mahoney's not on LinkedIn very much.
Exactly. So, according to what you've seen, which are the media? Probably, I know all medias, but is there a media that is better suited to some people, some industries, some personalities? If you had to give a suggestion, which media would you suggest?
For social media wise, I'm a LinkedIn guy. I have no use. I used to be big on Facebook. I have no use for Facebook anymore. Instagram, I'm one of those, have an account and will scroll but never contribute. What I like about LinkedIn is just the depth and the opportunity to learn. I learn every time I get on there, and that's what I tell folks who, my son, for example, who, I'm trying to press him, like, get on LinkedIn, like, start sharing things that are interesting to you. You don't have to say anything. Just say, hey, this is very cool. Like, this he's at Purdue. Like, this group in Purdue is doing this. another, Elon Musk blew up another spaceship. Oh, that's too bad. But start, just be curious and be out there and share things that are interesting to you, and educate people like me who are out there. And I'll see you post once or twice, and if you post it twice interesting, I'll follow. I'll be like, oh, I can learn something from this person. I can follow. So for me, LinkedIn is the best. And actually the only, I'll be honest, the only. I don't go on X anymore. That never really worked well for me for MedTech, and I don't know if others have more success there, but I never got a lot of traction there when it was Twitter, and then I just gave up when it became X because it became something else.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask you about X because I have a lot of my clients are asking me, should we start posting on X? Because actually there are a lot of healthcare professionals on X. But I don't know, it seems to me that they're more talking between themselves, but I have never seen a lot of industry talks or industry pitches on X, and I had the same experience. I didn't get any traction, honestly.
Yeah, and it's not political. I mean, I went on Blue Sky for a time. Like, I'll give Blue Sky a try. It's basically Twitter. I mean, it's the same thing. And I tried for about a month, and I think I probably could have gotten some traction, but I didn't really. I don't know. I didn't like the format. It just doesn't connect with me. So and someone listening to this might absolutely love it. Go for it. If it's a media for you, then by all means use it. Because to your earlier point, it is hard to continually to put things out there. It takes time, takes some thought. Very often, though, it's always interesting. I'll sometimes put like a lot of thought into a post, and I'll put it out there and wait for it to kind of catch fire, and nothing happens. But if I post a picture of my snow shovels, like, should I put my snow shovels away? People just go crazy about it. Like, you never know what's going to take off, because sometimes your deep thoughts aren't the thoughts that are connecting with people, and sometimes people just like knowing that your snow shovels are still on the porch, and that you're living the same kind of life that they are. That's just, you never know. So that's why just it can take a lot of thought to put these together, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of awareness. It's kind of like working. I think it's kind of like working out. Like, if you spend 5 minutes a day just thinking about something you'd like to say, and say it, and that's it, and that is done, and then move on. Like, you exercised for the day. That's it.
Yeah, and then there is the magic of LinkedIn, because as you said, in some cases you're putting a lot of thoughts and you have no visibility. In some other cases, you come out with a post that is for you is relatively simple and basic, and you get a great visibility. So that happens. I wanted to ask you something else about podcasts, but there is a very interesting question from Stefan that a lot of other people are asking me, and is the shift that LinkedIn is having. So towards LinkedIn is starting to be a bit more like a social media, and so a lot of users are starting to complain that LinkedIn is pretty much like Facebook. What is your opinion about this?
I'm sympathetic to that point. I have not seen it. It hasn't tipped that far yet. So for me, for Facebook, I'll just unpack my where I kind of soured on Facebook. I began to realize that it was. I think seeing people post only happy photos of themselves, I think, created a sense of lack for others. And if they were having a particularly hard time, seeing someone not have a hard time, I don't think it necessarily helped. I don't think it helps to see everyone else on vacation when you're not. I don't think it helps to see. And it just became a point of, I think, bragging and bragging sometimes in a positive way. Yes, I'm happy your son won the football game, or I'm happy, you're sitting on a beach with your feet up and the picture of the sea and your feet in the sand and all. I get all that. I'm personally am happy for you, but I don't need to see that. So I would hate to see LinkedIn go that way. I do, as I mentioned, like, I posted the picture of my snow shovels, but it was more like, okay, it's the end of March. I think I'm going to get rid of my snow shovels. What does that say about my mindset? Is it a growth mindset, or is it a negative mindset? I do try to sort of tie it into to the professional side of things. And I also do try to limit, like, I wouldn't do more than 1 or 2 of those probably a month. I do try to stick to what we focus on. So I don't have a concern about LinkedIn going that route yet. But if we're seeing more and more of that, yeah, I don't think that's what it is for at all. I see it as a tool for professional enrichment, not personal branding, as in look at me and look at my lifestyle. I don't think anybody really needs to see that. And the good thing about LinkedIn is if you start seeing someone do that, and just unfollow them. Like, you know what, you're done, and the market speaks. Like if someone sees their followers go down, then they're going to be like, whoa, I gotta assess what's going on here. Like this is not what I want it to happen.
It's true. We can have an active role that is shaping the social media. If you start to unfollow, or like, I don't know, I'm receiving multiple direct messages. I think LinkedIn is great for direct messaging. It can be incredibly powerful. At the same time, the overuse of direct messaging is creating a flood of spam that is not useful.
No,
So
agreed. And as my followers grow, like I'm starting to get things that are just like pitches for companies that I would never use. It's like, all right, I don't mind a pitch that actually speaks to what I do. I don't love it sometimes because I have, I'll just give them my email address. But yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, the good news about LinkedIn, like if I had a time, I just kind of cleared up my Facebook. I think just people who don't have my text number, so I could, like, if they need to reach me, they can. But I got rid of everyone else. And I think there are probably some hurt feelings. Like if you unfriend someone on Facebook, suddenly they look at themselves. If you unfollow someone on LinkedIn or hide their notifications, because it's not that same kind of relationship, I don't feel as bad.
Okay, you have a wonderful microphone, as I told you. And so I guess
this microphone, you mean? Yes, this enormous microphone in the campus.
And clearly you're a master of podcasts. So what is your we spoke about LinkedIn, but now podcast is becoming extremely popular.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think about podcasts?
Well, I've been doing them for 10 years. I've started probably more than a dozen, and they're all still around remarkably. I'm a fan of audio. Like I learn best listening to things as opposed to reading them or even watching them. So the podcast media is perfect for me, and I think it's a perfect way for companies to get their stories out. We are moving into video, just as an aside, because our managing editor Kayleen Brown is a fan of video, and she thinks it's more important or as important. So we're providing both. But to answer your question more directly, I think podcasts are great because for companies, they're a very targeted and precise way to get out your messaging and to get out the messaging you want, and also to do it in a way that you can control and that you can sort of create the whole listening experience. I mean, we're doing that with a lot of the companies now, helping them tell their stories. We created podcasts for Olympus. We're doing a whole series for Olympus. So for me, I think it's a fantastic way to get the news out. And I came to love it because I was writing for magazines for the longest time, and I always enjoyed the interviews. And I don't hate writing, but the interviews are always more fun than the writing. So for me to be able to just talk to someone and then polish it up and send it on its way was perfect. So podcasts are, I think they're here. I don't want to say they're the future, but I think they could be a real intricate part of a communication platform. I don't know if everyone who's looking to build out their brand, I don't think they need to have a podcast. But if they have a story to tell, or if they have a point of view, they're not that hard to do, and they're kind of fun. So it is a way to kind of even practice talking to people. I've listened. If you listen to my first podcast, the OIS podcast in 2014, I was dreadful. I was reading it. I was reading my lines. It was just scripted and stilted and awkward. But you get better, like in anything. You get better by doing it. So even if you're doing a podcast that, is getting a dozen listens, but you're having fun, then do it and have fun.
And now we've been talking about all the digital media, public speaking in front of people, trying to speak in congresses, events. Do you think that that is valuable for the others and for the creation of a personal brand?
Yes, I think so, for sure. I mean, I think it's always great to speak at conferences like Device Talks. If you've got a Device Talk story to tell, we try to provide not overwhelming venues for folks to speak at. But no, I think if there's no harm to public speaking.
I was asking because you mentioned before Ivan Tornos and the fact that when he starts to talk, there is a silence.
Yeah.
And these are all elements that in a social, in a digital environment, you cannot perceive.
Right.
And the feeling that you receive from a stand-up talk is completely different, clearly, than a podcast.
It is, absolutely. And his, like, our keynotes are the rare example, I think, of where I can turn a session from a conference into a podcast. But there have been folks who have done like presentations or even panel discussions at our conferences, and they're like, "Oh, we want to turn that into a podcast." I'm like, "Well, it's a completely different experience. Like, you cannot. Podcasts need to have that sort of intimate one-on-one connection to work." But to your point about the in-person meetings, I think it's. I used to be terrified of speaking in public. Like, I hated getting. My first conference, I think someone asked me to moderate something, and I think there were like 14 people there, and for me, it was like, okay, I can do 14 people, and it was now I've reached a point where I can get up in front of hundreds, whatever. Like, the size doesn't matter. Like, you get to a point where you're comfortable with yourself. And you also come to believe my trick, and this may or may not be true, but I believe everyone in the room wants me to succeed. Like, they want me to do really well. They don't want this to stink. They want it to be good. So why would I be nervous? We're all pulling for the same thing. And it's helped me a lot to be able to speak publicly here and in life and in civic participation. It just makes things go easier. So if it's something that you can have an opportunity to do, if you have someone like me who said, "Look, we have a room with 50 people. We want to come talk to us about how your pulmonary valve was designed," do it. Just come do it and just have some fun.
Yeah, you're touching on so many points. And I'm sorry, I can see Annalisa has a question, and then there is another question. So I will follow up on those questions, but I don't want to lose this point. What you're saying is public speaking is also something that is helping your confidence.
Yes.
It's helping you as a person. That is an extremely valuable point. But you mentioned something, how a leader could have these opportunities. What should they do? Should they contact you or people like you, or what is the process? What is the procedure
for a leader to
stand? Let's say I am a CEO and I want to start to bring my personal brand forward, or bring myself and my company, my mission and vision forward. I start posting. Maybe
Yep.
I start doing some videos, and I post the videos. But then, in order to go to the level of the podcast, probably there is an element of networking or asking to somebody. It's very unlikely that somebody will call you unless you're extremely famous.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get a lot of requests to be on the podcast, in more than we can handle, because when you've got a podcast that comes out every week, I need to make sure every episode is as strong as it can possibly be. Of course, it makes sense. So while there are people who are leading companies that are may someday create something great. Like there are too many great stories for me to tell on my podcast. So it doesn't though hurt to reach out and introduce yourself and to say, ask about the process and ask about the podcast. I honestly would, I think, appreciate that more than someone who comes at me and says, "This is why I should be in your podcast because we're doing blah blah." Like it's like, look, relax. Like just like talk to me like I'm a human being. I don't need to be. I'm not going to read your email and be like, "Oh my god, this is a huge opportunity. I can't believe." Like that's not how it happens. Like I read your email, I'm like, "Oh, this is really interesting. Like you've got an interesting story. All right, let's have a conversation." And it may or may not end up in being a podcast. But I think that's another kind of, it's a great point. I think it's another point of practice is to reach out and to communicate with people like myself to see what works and what doesn't. I always like the personal emails more than what's starting to make the job harder for everyone are PR firms that are using listservs and things to send out pitches. Like it's customized to you and they make it sound like it's a personal pitch, but then you start to read it and it's a pharma company or something that's completely unrelated. So I ignore it because I've got a lot to do. And then they email the next day, just making sure you got this. So I ignore it. And like, I don't know how much of it is a bot and how much is it not, but that kind of stuff. So if you're a PR person and you're sending those out, please don't. Like you're ruining it for everybody else. Like I want to hear from folks directly. You're not doing your clients a favor by sending out these automated messages because I'm not an engineer, but I'm not a dummy either. Like I know what's written for me and what's not. So, but if you're a small company, a CEO who wants your story told, reach out. And if we can't have you on the podcast, there might be an opportunity for another speaking opportunity, or there might be something else going forward. And you never know. I get emails that a year later, I kind of circle back and say, you know what? Like this is perfect right now. Can we get together and have a conversation? Like you just never know. So just reach out. But it does go back to the point of I'll look up the person on LinkedIn. And if they're not commenting, like if they haven't commented in 3 years, I'd be like, all right, well, like, do they really have a lot to say if they're not on LinkedIn commenting on what they're doing? Like, so it's kind of a chicken and an egg sort of thing. So I would focus on LinkedIn first, get your story out there, and then begin reaching out to folks who have podcasts. And there's a lot of podcasts out there too. So if I say no, there's others who would love to have you on. And I don't mean that like, I don't mean that in a snobby way. So like our core audience are companies that service medical device companies, contract manufacturers, engineering firms. I think of the industry more broadly, but those are the kind of companies I focus on. I'm getting a lot of AI kind of digital imaging things now, which are great, but I can't do too many of those. And it also may just be, and I'm rambling now, but like I may have talked to a digital imaging company 2 weeks ago, and now you're coming at me with a digital imaging pitch. I'm like, well, I can't have another one. Like I just did this one. I can't do another one for another 4 months because my listeners need a sample of lots of different things. So long story short, there's a lot that goes into saying yes and a lot that goes into saying no. So just ask.
Yeah, and the no is not necessarily related to the person. It could be related to the opportunity of the moment.
Exactly.
Okay, there are a few questions. One is going back again on the concept of the criticism, and is relating the criticism to the company brand. So let's say I am a CEO, I'm a CEO, or I am an R&D manager, or another key person in the company. I don't communicate well, or I generate some negative comments, and then I affect my brand. Is that something that the people should be afraid of?
I don't think. I mean, I don't think so. I think as long as you're careful with what you post. Look, I've got strong feelings, political feelings. I'm in the U.S. and I've got things that I feel that should be said, and I kind of hold back. I may imply where I'm going this way or that politically, and people can kind of read between the lines. But I'll never come out. LinkedIn's not for me. LinkedIn's not the place where that sort of happens. I can point to consequences that I hope don't impact the MedTech industry. But speaking for a company, though, I just don't. I think there's a lot of territory for a leader to comment on what their company is doing and what they want their company to be on what a product approval means for the company, who they met, what patient they met yesterday that benefited from their. I think there's a lot of territory for CEOs of companies to comment on, to use those posts to educate and inspire without straying into anything that would rain a lot of hate on them. I mean, I think there's always the risk that someone for some reason has a bone to pick with your company. But those comments can also be, ignored or deleted. And I don't think that no one's gonna topple a big MedTech company through a LinkedIn post. So I think that's overstated. As long as you're reasonable with your posts. I mean, don't go out there. I mean, there are some CEOs who do go out there and put it all out there, and I say bravo, good for them. But I don't think it's necessary. I don't think you have to do that.
Okay, there are a few other great questions. They're really touching on very interesting elements. One is saying there are many successful leaders who are not necessarily great communicators and turn to professional help. How can they manage to remain their authentic self? And I can relate to this because there are a lot of leaders that are seeking for help, and the big question is, like you mentioned again, Ivan Torno saying, I'm writing all my posts by myself. And I appreciate his stuff. Must be really difficult considering the workload he has. So what is the balance? What is the balance of keeping the authentic self but being helped to be professional?
No, I think that's a great question. And I don't think there's one way to go about it. And I don't think everybody needs to be Ivan Tornos by any means. He clearly enjoys it. And there are some people like me who love putting their ideas out there, getting challenged and being told whether they're knuckleheads or not. Some people don't want to do that. And I respect that. So I think I do agree there are successful leaders who are not necessarily great communicators. I just think that that's something that if they're successful leaders, they're obviously smart and capable. And you may not communicate well, but it doesn't mean you're not a great communicator. I think you can learn to communicate. I learned to communicate. I was a mumbly teenager. Like I didn't go through life like being able to talk and like this. It took me 20 years to kind of get this. Even as a journalist, I became a journalist, so I don't have to talk publicly. I mean, I could write about it, but I never had to stand in front of people. I volunteered for a board in my city once, and I was like terrified being up there in front of everybody and offering my thoughts. So we can all change and we can all grow. And I think we should try to do that. So I would flip it and say, look, if I'm a good CEO, not being a good communicator is something I need to get better at. So yes, your comms team can help with that. I think it also helps to find good venues. I won't say the name of the company, but one of the companies we worked with, I know they've enjoyed working with us because we've spoken to a number of their executives, and the comms folks have told me, like, look, this has been really great for us because they don't speak publicly. They don't get it in front very often. So when they talk to you, they kind of get that under their belt, and they feel more comfortable when they go off and talk to someone else, maybe the Wall Street Journal or something. So I think it's finding the right venue. Podcast, to your earlier question about podcasts, I think they're a great way to get the word out because I always tell people, and I very rarely have to do this, to be honest with you, but I always tell people, look, if I ask a question that makes no sense, because that can happen, like just say, Tom, that made no sense. And we can rewind for 3 seconds and I can ask the question and we'll edit that part out. Similarly, if you're answering a question, you're like, oh my God, where the heck is this going? Like, can I take another swing at that? We can work that out. I imagine most podcasts that aren't live like this one can do that. So I think those are good sort of ways to get out there. And I honestly, God, don't usually touch it. I think I've edited maybe 1% of our podcast. Like it just, we don't have to do that. But I think just giving the folks the confidence that, look, if I trip up, it's not going to be a big deal, helps them succeed. So if you're a comms professional who's working with an executive who doesn't like to communicate and they're open to learning how, I mean, that's the primary thing. If they don't care and they don't want to know how to communicate, you're not going to convince them that they want to. I think there are settings out there that allow them to succeed. And again, our managing editor, Kayleen Brown, she manages or rather records most of our sponsor messages, where we have a lot of mid-tier folks coming in and being interviewed. And she's fantastic at getting them comfortable and helping them sort of articulate themselves in a more direct way. So there are opportunities out there.
Okay, there is an interesting question from Akanksha that is probably going a little bit away from the key topic, but I think she's touching on a very important element, and what is your advice for early professionals that are trying to break in the industry, but repeatedly being asked for experience? So basically here, I think we're touching on the point of how personal brand, or again, coming out in the social media, is helping your hiring, you're finding your perfect job.
Yeah, it's a great question. And we not to keep going back to Yvonne Tonos, but during my Q&A at Device Talks Boston, a young woman who's graduating from Cornell, probably has graduated now, during our Q&A stood up and asked that very same question, how do we break in? And Yvonne Tonos, being Yvonne Tonos, he tracked her down and gave her his email, and she's talking with folks at Zimmer Biomet now. So I'm not suggesting everyone do that, but I am being sympathetic that it is hard to kind of break in and get that first piece of experience. And I'm seeing that with my son. He's just a sophomore, but trying to get internships and things, it can be hard. I don't have a clear answer for you with the experience, other than, but I will say, I think you're better off having a decent personal brand and having no experience. You're better off having a decent personal brand and zero experience than you are having a zero personal brand and a zero experience. So I have to think the personal brand will help find you that opportunity one day. I think you'll connect with someone who on LinkedIn who, you can reach out to them privately and say, hey, look, this is who I am. I think you're working on something very cool. Let me know if I can help in some way, maybe consulting first. I'm not sure, but I wish I had more concrete examples for that, or more concrete solutions for that. But I think you're doing the right thing. I think you're building your personal brand, and I think you're getting your name out there. And I can't imagine that opportunity won't follow.
Another question from the audience is, I've been asked by marketing professionals in our space if there is a risk of the personal brand outshining the company brand.
Boo. I mean, come on. Come on. I mean, I don't know. If my personal brand was outshining my company brand, well, number one, my company should be happy. Great, Tom's on fire. He's drawing all these people to come to our conferences and to listen to our podcasts and to learn about our sponsors. If you're working at a major MedTech company and your personal brand is outshining of the major MedTech company, then I think the major MedTech company has some work to do. And if you're at a smaller company and your personal brand is outshining the smaller company, I can't imagine that the ownership isn't grateful to have this guy's getting our name out in front of people. This will help us when we raise money. This will help us when we look for clients. This will help. I see no downside. I don't buy into that. And someone can come at me and tell me why I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but I don't see that downside. I just don't.
I fully agree with you, but I have to say, having lived for more than 25 years the corporate life, this is a real concern. This is really happening. I see that happening in a lot of companies.
I can see that it probably is a concern of some comms people, but I don't think in real life it should be something they should be afraid of. I think it's a contrived concern. And
yes, okay, perfect. I fully agree. Okay, we are at 55 minutes, so we try to remain within the hour. So if there are no more questions for the audience, I would like to like give a summary, sum up a little bit of what we talked. And I wrote here while you were talking, I wrote some notes that is saying, first of all, if you really want to be a leader, the most important element is showing your authenticity, showing yourself, showing your stories, telling about your personal stories. They don't need to be always sunshine and rainbow, always excellent. I mean, you may want to share some failures as well every once in a while, because this is what happened. I think one of the things that you said that struck me is real life can be interesting. Because if I am experiencing the same situation, yeah, your story is very interesting to me, even if it's a standard story and you're not an NFL superstar. So don't be afraid of criticism. There were a lot of questions about criticism, but I think you ruled them all out and saying, yeah, criticism is not a real concern. And then don't be shy. Don't be shy to come out. Consider the fact that it may take a little bit of time, but don't be shy. And if I understand correctly, you're saying there is a stepping stone, there is a journey in which you're learning how to talk, you're learning how to communicate, you're learning many things, but probably right now in 2025, the first step of this journey is creating a positioning on LinkedIn. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair. And yeah, I think you can take small actionable steps to just get yourself out there, and also, and when you do hit pay dirt and you post something that gets some interest and maybe some likes, make sure you connect with those people. Just say, hey, thanks for liking my post. I hope we can connect, even if they're not directly related to what you're doing. It doesn't hurt to have people in adjacent industries is following you and vice versa. So, I always love when people reach out and connect. And if anyone listening wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do. So no, I think that's a really great assessment, and I'm very impressed that you took notes during this, because I can barely follow a conversation when I'm doing an interview, so I would never had to take notes before. So that was great.
I tried my best, Tom. And by the way, there was a comment from Steve saying that he had the same experience of concerns about the personal branding outshining the corporate brand. But we talked about this already.
I'm sorry, Steve. Keep at it, man. You keep doing it. I mean, I just if I'm in charge of the company, then I have to look at myself and say, why aren't we growing as quickly as Steve? Steve works for us. We should be drawing the same amount of interest. That's all. Or maybe we'll put Steve in front of our brand, in charge of our branding, and let him build it up. Keep at it,
Steve. Tom, I none better than Tom. Yes, yeah, they're all your supporters.
David's a good LinkedIn friend. Yes, yeah.
but Tom, I have to admit, you're really the best.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks a lot for your time, and thanks for your honesty, your clarity. You're a fantastic communicator, and I think I have enjoyed it a lot. I hope that the other listeners have enjoyed it, at least as me. And I don't know, do you have anything that you're doing that you want to share with us that might be interesting? I am a great follower of all your podcasts and device talks. I don't know if there is anything new coming out now.
We just launched episode 2 of Olympus Talks yesterday. We'll have some more podcasts coming out, but right now my attention is being focused on Device Talks Minnesota, which is happening on June 11th in Minnesota. So if anyone's in the Twin Cities and they want to meet up and do a lot of in-person, because I do really, to your point about the hushed room with Ivan Antonos, there's nothing like being in a room with a couple of hundred other MedTech people and just bumping into them after. And I mean, LinkedIn is great, but it's not a replacement for getting together in person. So folks can join us June 11th at the McNamara Alumni Center.
Will you ever organize a Device Talks in Europe?
I would love to. We don't have plans at the moment, but I would, I would certainly love to. Ireland would be a great spot, but on it going on into deeper into Europe would be interesting as well. So if anyone out there has a suggestion, feel free to reach out. Our events team will probably throttle me for suggesting we could take on another event, but there's so much great MedTech to talk about. I'd love to get the word out a bit more.
Yeah, no, it's and I think in Europe there is the needs of this type of conversations. Okay, there are all the thanks, Tom. Again, thank you, and looking forward.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.